Try to think of something clever and witty. It's very difficult. It's one of the most difficult things for me. This is the worst part because it's not just talking. You know what I mean? Yeah. When we're just talking, that's fine. But when I have to try to say something that sounds like a YouTube video, that's where it gets muddy. Hello and welcome to the SweetHome Podcast. Today, joining me is the amazing Derick Honorè. He's been a blast. He's been hilarious. I like talking to this guy, and I think you guys will like what he has to say. Yeah. We're going to talk about some of his real estate experiences today and just show you guys what an amazing agent can do for you, finding the home of your dreams and helping you realize your real estate goals.
Yeah, thanks. I really appreciate the opportunity to be here and kind of share some of the experiences that I have. And I think for me, I'm just really excited at the idea of what you guys are trying to do here.
Yeah.
I love the idea of a community and a platform that we can share experiences and we can share knowledge and things that help make us as agents, lenders, buyers, or sellers like better at what we do.
Sure. And there's a lot of different perspectives out there. I want to showcase that there's plenty of people out there who can help you, who align with your thoughts and your philosophies and your lifestyle, and just put that out there for people. That's the goal of this place, I hope.
Yeah,
hopefully.
And I think the thing that's really cool is that like I know that who I am and how I do business isn't going to jive with everybody.
Yeah.
And I'm honestly okay with that. I'm not trying to be somebody different so that I cater to a different kind of clientele. I had somebody funny when I was first going to real estate school. I had somebody that was talking to me. She was new too, and she was like, "Oh, I'm gonna have like a 3-piece suit so that if I show clients like this price home, then I'm in this, and like when I'm showing clients like a cheaper home, I'll dress down like this." And I was like, it's an interesting perspective. So
should you?
I own like 10 of this exact shirt.
Yeah.
And then I own 10 of the exact same pair of shorts. And so unless I'm in the middle of like painting my house or doing something, you're going to get this every time. And there's a consistency there. And like sometimes clients want you when you just like ran and like you don't have time to like go shower or something and you're stinky and gross and covered in paint. And like, I can't tell you how many times I've shown a house like that. I can't tell you how many times I've already been out with my family, like on a chill, relaxed day. And I get a call to show a house right down the road and it's an hour for me to go home. And it's like, no, I'm just going to show the house. So
I've always been a jeans and t-shirt kind of guy too. So when they told me that, oh, you can't wear jeans to the office, like nobody even sees me here. Like, what's the point of that? like I'm not going on TV and, pitching something.
Yeah. I had a client when I was first starting out. I definitely didn't have a lot of money. I had a car that was paid for and, it was, it was a little ratchet and the rear window fell off the track. And so I had tape from the inside going over the frame and then to the outside. And it was holding the window up so that the window wouldn't fall down.
Yeah.
And I showed up to show him a house and he made a comment about the car and it was just kind of weird in passing. And he was driving a brand new car and he was younger than I was. And I was like, whatever, who cares? Bought a really nice house. And later he said to me, I almost didn't use you as a real estate agent because of your car.
Wow.
And like now I drive a really nice vehicle, but like, I was like, if you don't choose me because of the car that I drive, or you choose me because of the car that I drive, I don't know. Like, it's a little concerning to me.
Either outcome's fine, but maybe he assumed you negotiated for the car and that's all you got.
Whatever it was, it closed. I got paid. I guess that's a good thing. Yeah. So being a little bit about my story getting to real estate. So when we moved to Alabama from Michigan, that was a relocation for work. And the company was like, hey, it was like 3 days before Christmas, and they were like, "We need you down in Huntsville, January 19th working." And I was like, I got to sell a house. I got to it was a lot. I had 2 homes previously in Michigan, and both times we went through several real estate professionals before we were like, nope, this isn't working out. And then inevitably we would find something, and then we just put in an offer on it, and it had nothing to do with the agent whatever.
How long did that take? What kind of time frame?
So the first house that we bought, I actually bought from my parents. They had bought it from my aunt, and she had moved out. And so we bought that. No real estate agents. We just did a land sales contract, but it's my parents, right?
Sure.
So we did that. And then when I went to sell it, we had it listed with several local people. And I think it sat on the market for several months before we finally kind of tossed in the towel on that agent. And we found a big advertised guy that was supposed to be really good, and he came in and he sold the house really quick.
What was the difference, do you think?
I think that the one guy was trying to get us to list with him, and the other guy didn't care if we listed with him or not.
Sure.
And so he kind of just gave us the cold, hard facts. The first guy was probably, I think we ended up selling that house for like $90,000. The first guy told us to list at $100,000, and we just never went anywhere.
Yeah.
And it really wasn't us saying like, oh, we think it's worth $100,000. He was like, this is what I think your house is worth. And we were like, okay, like, whatever you say. The second guy came in and he was like, I think we should list at like, I don't remember the exact numbers. It's like $92,500 or something like that. And he was like, I'm going to tell you right now, I think it's going to sell between $89,500 and $90,750 or something. It was like really weirdly specific numbers. And I was like, man, that's not a big window.
Did he show you
like
comps?
$1,000. Yeah. And so, so he put his, and I think that was probably, part of professionalism, right?
Sure.
So the one guy, and everybody kind of has a different approach on this, but the first guy had an H post sign. So that's your stereotypical yard sign with the little stakes that you stick in the ground. And the second guy, like, he had a guy who came out in a pickup truck, post hole digger, 4x4 post in the ground, white painted arm hanger, hung out the sign. It was really professional. And for this $90,000 house,
Sure.
It was like, wow, this is crazy. Like, he's really going through a lot of work for this, my little house. And it sold quick. I think for where the market was at, I think it was like under contract within like 3 weeks at that time, which was like 2014 or 2015, something like that. And so when we went to buy another house, we were like, well, will you help us? And he said, I only do listings. And I was like, oh, well, that stinks. So, so then we went out and like tried to find agents again. And we went through like 3 or 4, and looking back, it's kind of humbling. I think my expectations were unrealistic, and I don't know if it was the agents. I think it was me.
Yeah.
I wanted everything.
Take the blame on that.
Yeah. I'll take the blame on that. I think I wanted like land privacy and had no budget. So everything we were looking at was, dilapidated. So. That was humbling. So eventually we ended up letting go our real estate agent, and we were like driving around trying to find stuff on our own. And we found a house, and the listing agent put in the offer for us. And it was frustrating. So somebody had flipped the house, and Michigan's a disclosure state. So there's a whole like seller disclosure thing, which to this day, I'm still not a big fan of. And the reason being that they just flat out lied on the disclosure. Yeah. And I think in a way it made me think that I could trust the disclosure.
Like a false sense of comfort.
Yeah. 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 And I don't think that I went through a process being guarded as much as I should have.
Well, and some of the way those disclosures are from what I can see, is they will say that of.
Yeah,
you know
to your knowledge.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
Then you got to prove whether or not they knew that.
Yeah.
And sometimes that's possible, but most of the time
you can't. Yeah. You can't. Just being real. And so we were pretty frustrated with that. The house flooded shortly after us living in it. And when we went to do repairs, repairs had been done very recently.
Yeah.
And I went to paint a room and removed a HVAC grate from the wall to paint. And it was just a cutout of the drywall. There was no vent or anything there. And so that room wasn't even heated and cooled.
Wow.
So there was no closet in that room. It shouldn't have ever been considered a bedroom. Like there was a bunch of things. But anyways, so some frustrations, and we definitely weren't educated on what that looked like. So that wasn't like, we never felt like we were represented in that case. Then we moved down here to Alabama for work, and someone had suggested an agent, and we were like, okay, well, we trust you, so we'll trust this person. And she was pretty good. We definitely adjusted our expectations.
Yeah.
We learned a little bit. And she found one of the things, because I'm tall, one of the things that was important to me is I wanted cathedral or vaulted ceilings. Yeah. And she found us a really good house. I still own it to this day. And so we went through the process, and there was some frustrations involved in purchasing the home. People said that things were done and they were never done. And we ended up inheriting the problems. And so when my company announced that they were selling 3 months after I relocated here.
Wow.
We had a decision, right? So it was like, well, what are we going to do? So I signed all management was requested by the previous owner of the company, and it was a very small family-owned company. So we all knew and trusted the owner, and we were all pretty much there because of who the owner was and what he stood for.
Sure.
So he asked us to commit 2 years to the process. He said, I just want you to commit 2 years, and after that, you can do whatever you want. Obviously, we had a non-compete, but so I signed up along with everybody else, and my wife and I were like, okay, we need to come up with a game plan for what we're going to do, because he sold to a really, really large household name type store, and I went from being one of 100 employees to one of 12,000 employees.
Wow. Yeah. That culture definitely changed. Yeah.
Completely different. And I had autonomous control of my facility here in Alabama. I was their corporate fixer. So when problems arose, I was the guy that came in and fixed it, which is why they sent me here. Was to fix the facility, and then and that was part of them selling.
Was this the first time you moved doing that? Or
yeah, I was born and raised and grew up within 45 minutes of, or always lived within 45 minutes of where I grew up. And so, yeah, relocating was huge for us. Which, I think a lot of people in this town come here and don't have any connection points.
Yes.
Which is really terrifying. So I stayed on for 2 years, and during the process, they made several passes at trying to keep me. And I was like, I really don't. I've learned 3 different software programs for what I do.
Right.
And at this point, I'm really not interested in learning another one. It's exhausting.
Yeah.
It takes like 2 years to really like master a new program. And so I was like, I'm good. So it was at that point that my wife and I were like, we've been so frustrated with real estate transactions and stuff like that. And, maybe the best way to make a difference is to be the difference.
Yeah.
And so I went to school, finished, joined real estate, and, that was kind of my goal. Man, it's been humbling to, because you see all the mistakes that you made when you were, a buyer or part of the process.
Well, and a lot of what I've noticed is on the outside of the real estate world, on the outside, people's ideas of realtors and real estate in general mostly comes from HGTV, where they're finding school teachers who want an $800,000 house on the beach, and it has to have recovered ship wood on the walls. Like, where are they finding those people?
Right.
And the realtors, when they're looking at all these houses, well, I found you 3 houses, pick one of them. Like, that's not how it works.
Yeah.
Do you like the one with blue paint? Do you like the one with the back porch? Like, there's way more to it. Than it's advertised. They
don't really show the like negotiations back and forth or anything like that.
Yeah.
I've always thought it was funny, now that I'm in real estate as a real estate agent, to look back and watch some of those shows. And then I'm like, the only way that they could absolutely know is if they owned all of the houses that they were showing. Right. And so, whatever, scripts and all the things. But I do agree. I think from an expectation standpoint, part of my frustration is as fun as it is to watch the before and after, because it's very satisfying, at least for me it is, to watch the before and after and to see the breakdown, I think gives hope that it can be done. But it's like, man, what you don't see and what you don't know is the 10-year relationship that person has with that contractor or, like whatever. And I think it's like underappreciated, because I've definitely had a lot of people over the years that are looking for the deal that's on those shows.
Yeah.
And they're like, oh, well, I can make money. And the reality is, I'll sit down with those people and I'll be like, look, this is what this would take for you to make money. And then it doesn't happen, and they're like, like they've got to buy the house for this price in order to make money.
And the estimates from the remodel, not even some of that stuff, they're getting at a steal, and it's just is what it is. And that's the only way to make money. Yeah. Because you see that and they're like, oh no, we got to completely re-pour the foundation and this is going to be an extra $1,200. Well, for one, not even close.
Yeah.
And when the show's over, like, well, we listed it for $800,000 and we sold it for $850. What do you do? Like, well, how often is that going to ever happen?
So I think that there has been a market shift, and I don't know if that's like a national thing. I see it locally, and I noticed it probably 2020, 2021, like right in that the height of the COVID, when everything was happening. And I noticed we were getting like, we won like best small town airport. We won like most cost-effective place to live, cost of living, like all of these things. And I started getting so many out-of-town investors.
Yeah.
Like so many of them. And so if I'm a small sample size of what is actually happening in the marketplace, for the amount of people who have called me and still are looking for those deals, I can only imagine how many are actually out there.
Oh yeah.
So I think our market in reality is oversaturated with investors looking for the flip deals. And I think that some of that comes out of that, the time of the HGTV shows and stuff like that. And it's not that it can't be done, because it's done every day.
Yeah.
But there's so many people that are also trying to do it. And I think for me, something that I've realized is that I think as I get older and older, I realize that I'm not as smart as I think I am or as unique as I think I am. I think there's a lot of people that are far smarter than I am. And so I realize that, when you're trying to live in that world and survive in that world financially, I think that that's got to be more or less your full-time job or your full-time hobby. So if you're trying to do it on a part-time world, I don't know that I think you can survive.
I've had friends who tell me that's their plan. They want to flip houses and all that. Like they want to do all the real estate, and you're not actually in real estate at that point. You're in construction.
You're right.
You're actually just in construction fixing houses. So reframe how you're thinking of it, and then maybe the numbers will line up better. So that's funny.
Yeah.
But when you were looking for your house, I guess here in Huntsville, did you go through a lot of realtors? You said you found one that was recommended.
Yep.
Pretty good.
Yep. So we had one that was recommended. The part of the process that I can see from a business standpoint, the value of, but was frustrating was that the agent showed the houses and negotiated the contract, and then there was a transaction coordinator that was involved, and that transaction coordinator was handling many deals.
Yep.
And from an efficiency standpoint, it makes a lot of sense. For me, I think part of the frustration was I had built a relationship and I was trusting the person that was recommended to me. And so when this other person comes in, I'm like, well, one, I really don't know you. I haven't built a relationship with you. I don't know that I can trust you.
Right.
I'm just supposed to blindly give you all of this personal financial information or whatever.
So for clarity, for people who don't know, you had an agent. The agent was showing you the houses. Then once you'd made your offer, it got passed to someone who's doing the paperwork, basically.
Correct. Yes. And my agent was difficult to get back a hold of because she was busy showing houses and doing other things to support her family.
Was that the same experience with the person who recommended it? Did they say that's how it worked for them too?
So that the person that recommended it had actually worked at that office as an assistant.
Okay.
So I don't know that they really were like intimately aware of what the process looked like or not. It was more of a character reference of the person than necessarily their professionalism.
Sure.
Does that make sense?
Yeah.
And so anyways, through the process, when it came down to problems, and this is something that I value, personally, is, when I'm working with somebody, I want to know that they're going to take care of stuff. Yeah. And when you build that trust with the person and then, crap hits the fan, it's that trust that carries you through the hard time.
You want to know that they're going to be standing there with you, facing the same problem, not just brushing you off.
Right. So when, crap hit the fan for us, I'm looking to the person who I trusted and I can't get a hold of them.
Yeah.
And honestly, the lender did more advocating for me than anybody in that transaction.
Well, they've got a dog in the fight too.
Yeah.
They want it to close.
And she honestly did way more than she needed to.
Yeah.
It was a kindness that was extended to me and my family that I appreciated, and still have a relationship with that lender today.
That's really good.
Yeah. So shout out to all the good lenders out there that work hard for their clients.
Yeah, sometimes we have to do that. We have to help people because they don't know how to find insurance. They don't know how their tax works. Their homesteading taxes, like in Alabama, that's unique for the most part.
Yes.
There's a lot that goes on behind the scenes other than just we decide whether or not we're going to loan you money.
Right, exactly.
Which I don't actually decide ever. Right.
But. Yeah, sometimes it's just the guidelines. You know? So
what kind of problems, when you say, it hit the fan, what?
Oh, yeah, that's fair. So when we bought the house, we found out through kind of a myriad of pieces of information that the home had been unoccupied for like 4 or 5 years.
Okay.
So when we had the home inspections done, there were all of the problems that you can imagine from an unoccupied house.
Yeah.
So anything that was leaking had mold and water damage around it because it had just been sitting there leaking for years and years and years. Overgrowth, like the yard was overgrown. There were trees in places there shouldn't have been trees. We actually had a tree growing through our HVAC unit, our outdoor HVAC unit. And so some of those problems came up on our inspection report, and our inspector was very thorough. And so we went through a process of negotiating for things that we felt were significant items. Anything that was cosmetic or smaller deal items, we were like, we're not concerned about it. We'll figure it out. But we want these big items. Like this tree that's growing through the HVAC unit, that's not going to work. So they tried to remove the tree, and it left a great big old hole. And I learned a lot about HVAC.
Yeah.
So a lot of that stuff is like aluminum, and it doesn't bend well. It breaks more than anything. So as soon as they pulled that tree out, basically all these pinholes had developed from the fracturing of the tree, like growing and spreading. And so that whole HVAC unit was toast. Well, we thought that they were going to replace the HVAC unit to begin with, and all they did was remove the tree. And so we were like, yeah, that's not going to work.
Sure.
So they ended up replacing the HVAC unit. There were some safety concerns. There were windows that there was nothing holding them up. So,
like the framing, or what do you mean?
No. So when you'd go to open it, there's supposed to be like a ballast spring that holds the window up. And so you'd hold it up and let go, and it just slammed down. And they were metal windows, so they had sharp edges, and we had young kids. So it's like, if you do that on little fingers or
you got a bunch of guillotines on your wall.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah. So we were pretty concerned about that. And there were some other minor things, water leaks, stuff like that. And so I can't even remember how many times, but we'd be told something was done, like, hey, all work is completed. And so being that I've had several bad experiences in the past, I was like, okay, schedule an appointment. I was in an unoccupied house, right? So I was like, schedule an appointment. Let's go through and let's go look back through it. So we went back through, looked at it, and like the windows weren't done and the HVAC unit was never fixed the first time, right? So then we went back and we were like, okay. And then we were like, this, and this haven't been addressed. And so he was like, oh, I'm sorry. People told me that it was done. I'll send somebody out there and get it done. And so several weeks would pass and he'd be like, okay, it's all done. So then we went back through and the windows still weren't taken care of. The HVAC unit was installed. Leaks weren't taken care of. And we were like, hey, this still isn't done. And he's like, I don't know what's going on. They said that they were taking care of it. Yeah. I'll send them back out. I was like, okay. So then like another week passed. And at this point I was like, I'm just going to pay to have an inspector go back out there and re-inspect the home. And so he went back out, and some people don't know that. So you can pay a home inspector to go back out and he'll verify the things that he found. So you don't have to pay the full inspection. I think my guy was like $75 to go back out there.
That's pretty good.
And he was just like, let me just go over everything and make sure that it's all been fixed and like to code and stuff like that. So he went back through and he was like, windows still aren't done. And he actually fixed the leak.
The inspector fixed it?
Because he's like, this is such a simple fix. I don't know why nobody's ever done it. So he just fixed it for me, which was really nice. And so we actually went to the closing table because we were told by the transaction coordinator, don't worry about it. Just put it on your final walkthrough and the seller will fix it after close. And I was like, okay, like whatever, we want the house and we need to get in, right? Well, a month after close, he finally, because we kept pestering them, we're like, hey, when are you going to do this? Like you said that you're going to get it done and you still haven't done it. And he's like, you know what? Here's a check for $1,000. Stop bothering me. Like, just be done. And that definitely didn't cover any of the fixes or anything like that. But at that point, we had no hope that anything was going to get done because our agent was gone.
Right.
And
did she go to the closing? Was your agent at the closing?
No.
Or just the transaction?
The transaction
So a lot of those
was.
problems are things the agent should be handling.
In my opinion, yes.
Yeah.
But that's...
Or at least they're negotiating, and trying to find out the reasoning.
Right. So, again, business models, right?
Yeah.
The transaction coordinator is supposed to be helping the agent. I think my frustration was that it just felt like once we were under contract, the agent was gone. And so, so I tried to do that different when I was doing real estate for myself, So.
Well, that's the lessons that you learned from there, I guess, shaped you as an agent.
Yes.
And that's, well, sorry, let me rephrase that. Once you've been through all those problems, you can anticipate some of them on someone else's behalf. Because when Carrie and I bought a house, we didn't even know what to ask, to be honest. We were like 19.
Yeah.
Buying a house didn't even seem like a real thing we could do.
Yes.
Like someone's just going to let us buy this thing. But we didn't have an agent.
$12 an hour
Yeah,
job.
exactly. That was part of our problem, actually, but that's a whole nother.
Yeah.
This was right before the crash when they weren't even asking if you had a job to give you the loan. You know what I mean?
No real verification of income.
Like, oh yeah, you say you can afford it?
Lending.
Sure. But we didn't have an agent. And the lady selling the house, her husband was the one who remodeled it. And he was not a handyman. He was a part-time hobby carpenter. So a whole nightmare on that.
That whole DIY world is scary.
So Carrie actually knew that nightmare before she started too. So she's like,
appreciate it different.
When she hears, did you install cabinets? She knows to look for if the screw holes went through the water line, because that's what happened at ours. He just drilled right into the wall and put, holes all in the water line. But stuff like that, like I just said, people don't really know what to expect could even be wrong, because it's on your house that sat.
Yeah.
It's strange to think that a house can be lived in 150 years and be just fine, but it can sit about 10 and then it's ruined forever.
Yeah.
It's crazy how how much being empty can damage it.
Yes. Well, and for sure it's I think that that's probably why I appreciate things like this, right? Like an opportunity and a platform for the people who, because I think something that I have realized that I want to work on figuring out better is I think that sometimes people for sure don't know what to ask.
Yeah.
I think that there's also times that people are afraid to ask it. And that's like the hardest thing ever to me, because I don't want anybody to be afraid to ask a question.
Yeah.
I want people to ask me everything.
Well, and a lot of agents, I probably shouldn't say that. We'll back up. As a buyer, whenever you don't know what to ask, but you assume the agent has your best interest in mind and knows what to ask, you're kind of counting on their experience
for sure
to ask that question on your behalf. And sometimes that just doesn't happen because maybe the agent doesn't know, or maybe they both assume they're fine with it being that way, and that's not the case.
Well, and I think you speaking to what you're saying, I was sitting in a training for continued education, and they were showing stats on why people were choosing real estate agents, and by and large, as a vast majority, like a shocking statistic, people were choosing people based on either experienced trust or shared trust, right? So either someone said that this person was good, there were reviews that said that this person was good, or this person had experienced it either firsthand or secondhand, like either they were a part of the process for their friends or parents or whatever, or they're actually a repeat client. They're coming back to the same agent who helped them originally. And it's like there's nothing else that's worth like all the like marketing things that we think like social media, the acronyms that are around our name, like
a big billboard with people standing like this.
Designation.
I don't know if do they teach you guys to do this as an agent?
No.
Because they all do it.
They all do it. So it's like all of those things that we like to think, I think chased business people that try to get me, right? That are like trying to sell me something to promote my business or trying to partner with me or whatever. The things that they offer me are actually the things that are like 1% of the population actually chooses you based on. So like all the places that are trying to add designations to my name or whatever.
Titles or fancy papers or graphs.
People don't pick people based on fancy business cards.
I've seen a lot of agents get hung up on the design of their open house flyer. And I like everyone I've seen pick one of those up, throw it out before they leave the house.
Right.
Unless they're planning to buy it beforehand and then they didn't need the flyer in the first place, in my opinion. But
so those kind of things, right? The things that we like get in turmoil over are the things that like cumulatively make up less than 10% of the reason why people choose an agent.
It's like the 80-20 thing, where like 20% of what you're doing results in 80% of your, success.
Which makes a lot more sense the way that I've experienced clients. Because when someone comes to me, I'm like, why did you choose me or whatever? And it's because their friend used me or because their friend knows me.
And that's like the best compliment. You know what I mean? That guy had such a good experience that he came back.
Yes.
Suggested his friends come, stuff like that. So that's speaks volumes, in my opinion.
Yeah. So anyways, it's just that trust factor, I think, is possibly undervalued by our industry. To realize how big of an impact that makes, and that really should impact everything that we do in interaction with our clients.
Because it takes very little to damage trust permanently.
Yes.
I mean, they say once it's broken, it's never fully fixed again. Never. That's human nature.
Yeah. Well, when you've had a jaded experience, it's it can be hard to work past the pain of that. So, that's one of those things that like, I can see how in the rat race that we get in, worrying about like trying to hold deals together and make sure that we're negotiating all the things that we need to negotiate, and we're verifying timelines, and then stuff kind of hits the fan and we have to go into like overdrive mode to repair whatever's happened.
Because there is a lot. I mean, you juggle a lot of balls when you're doing real estate transactions, and it's easy to drop one, especially when you've got 4 or 5 clients and they're all on deadlines and they all want different things in different parts of the town.
Yeah.
So the make or break, in my opinion, on that is when you do drop a ball, for example, you're honest and you tell people, hey, that one's on me. I can make that right for you though. And not just disappear and
Well, yeah. I think so. I think what you're saying is like, I just don't think that it can be overstated, right? So for me, the times that I've experienced people dropping the ball, because everyone that I know that I have done significant volume of business with drops the ball.
Yeah.
The good ones, the bad ones, all of them. The thing that makes a difference for me I try not to live by a code of like, when trust is broken, it's gone forever.
Yeah.
And that's just for me personally, how I deal with other people. I used to have this like 1 strike policy for anyone that I dealt with in business, whether it was lenders, appraisers, inspectors, anything like that. If it was like I had a bad experience, it was like, hey, I got to protect my clients. The thing that I've realized more now and I've had two significant conversations that I'll talk about, but the thing that I've learned is the most important thing is not to have people that are perfect in the corner or that are trying to achieve perfection. The thing that's the most important to me is that I have somebody that's humble in the process and is honest in the process.
Yep.
Because I believe that more success and a better outcome comes out of that than anything else. And so I had one transaction. It's to date probably the coolest story from a client standpoint. I met her as a renter. She had called me and was like, hey, I want to go see this rental property. Can you get me in? And I was like, I'm happy to do it. And I showed it to her and she was super picky. And it really threw me off because I was like, a renter that's picky. I hadn't done a lot of rental leads. So I was like, I'm not sure if I understand that one. And I was like, I'm going to need you to like help explain this to me. And she's like, well, the last place that I was in for 10 years. I was like, wow, 10 years. That's a significant commitment.
It's a dedication.
And so she's like, I want it to have like the right kind of kitchen. I want it to have the right kind of flooring. I want like all these things. And I'm like, man, the kind of stuff that you're talking about really like, it sounds like you're trying to pick a house, like for you to live in.
Yep.
And, I was like, I'm just curious, why would you opt for renting versus purchasing? And she's like, oh, I can't buy. And I said, oh, well, who told you that? And she said, well, no one. I just don't think I can. And I said, well, that seems kind of silly. Here's a lender. Call them and let me know what they say. So she calls me back and she is like over the moon excited.
Yeah.
Right. And she's like, I got approved. And I was like, wow, look at that.
Yeah.
And so she had never tried. Like, I think the next day I went and took her to a spec house that was being built by a builder. And I actually knew about the house ahead of time. I had shown it to another client. And all of the things that she was talking about, this house had. And she walked in and she just immediately fell in love. And I was like, if you want this house, this was back in 2019 before all the chaos. Right. I was like, if you want this house can be yours. Like, I was like, all we got to do is go drive over to the builder and sign all the documents. And, like, you'll have to go through the lending process, but this will be your house. And she's like, what? And so we went over, signed everything. Long story short, the lender that I had recommended.
Yep.
Went through the process with her and was like, and I checked in on him regularly. I was like, do you have everything you need from her? Is there anything that I can help with? Where are we at? Have we ordered appraisal? Blah, blah, blah. And the house was 90 days from completion at the time we signed the contract. So I just did a little, in our business, we call them touches, right?
Sure.
Where you kind of like reach out, find out what's going on, and then retract.
Make sure the train's still rolling.
Yep. So I would do periodic touches. And then as we got closer, when we hit that 60-day mark, I was like, hey, I really want to make sure, because she was doing an FHA product. So I was like, I really want to make sure the ball's rolling at this point. 30 days, I was like, we should be well into the product, the process at this point, should be almost underwritten, right? Yep. And so we're about 2 weeks from close, and I hadn't heard from the lender in over a week. And I had tried several attempts to get a hold of them, and I finally get a call back. And it's not the lender, it's the lender's boss. So it's like the branch manager or whatever. And he's like, hey, I just want to let you know this lender has been let go. And I was like,
perfect timing.
Okay, great. And I was like, so where are we? And he's like, I'll have to check on it. I'll give you a call back later today. And I was like, okay. So I'm trying not to be concerned for my client, right? So I get the call back and he goes, unfortunately, we're not going to be able to do this.
Oh, wow. Wow.
And I was like, hold on. Not be able to do this and it's already been done are two different pieces of information that I've received over the last 3 weeks.
I guess that had something to do with why he was let go.
Yeah. So the basic gist is they never started on the packet at all. And I was like, we have a pre-approval that was issued by your company for this client. I said, it's weird. I have never experienced a lender retracting a pre-approval letter.
Yeah.
And I said, so you're saying that she's not approved and nothing's changed on her behalf financially. So explain that one to me. And he was like, we just can't do it in 2 weeks. There's no way. It's FHA, like it's not possible, blah, 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 blah. And I kind of let him have it, to be honest.
Deservedly, maybe.
I was like, for one, this was never her problem. And this guy worked for your company. Whether he was doing what he should have been or not,
sure,
you should stand behind it and you should be doing everything you can.
Yeah.
And to be quite frankly honest, I think that you just see a lot of work and you're throwing in the towel. And I didn't say anything unprofessional or wasn't true. I was very upset. I was like, she's going to be bawling her eyes out. She's been super excited about this, like blah, 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 blah. And I was like, you are going to make the phone call and tell her, because that's not something I should have to own. And so an hour later, I was like, I'm never going to do business with you. I never want to hear from you, like anything like that, because if this is how you're going to handle business, I'm not doing business. So an hour later, I get a call and, it says on my caller ID that it's coming from this guy. And I'm like, I really don't want to answer this phone call.
Yeah.
So I answered the phone call and he says, I want to thank you. And I was like, okay. And he was like, you called me out. And to be honest, you were 100% on the nose. This was just a difficult thing. I could get it done. I just didn't want to.
Yep.
And he's like, these are people. These aren't just numbers on the other side of this. And this is an impact that it has on people. He's like, so he called the builder and the builder agreed to extend the closing deadline by, I think we had to do it in 45 days. Okay. So from that date, so it's 30 days beyond the original close date.
Yep.
And he was like, I'm going to have to push like crazy to get this done within 45 days. This was, again, back when it took people 60 days to do an FHA loan. So he was like, I'm going to have to push and push and push, but we'll get it done. And at the end of the day, because of what she experienced, I mean, she was so mad. I mean, she was crying. Right. She was so mad, but it was his attempt at trying to make it right. And they gave her 0.25% interest reduction in her interest rate. And I don't know if that was a float down or I don't know how they did it, but at the end of the day, it was going to save her like $30,000 over 30 years or something like that. So, definitely never did business with that company again, because that was too much to deal with. But it was a significant impact, like mentally, for me. And the second one was someone who I did a lot of business with, and to be frankly honest, I know it wasn't just me that was sending him business. There were a lot of people that were doing it. He wasn't busy, and then he got super busy. And got so busy he wasn't calling clients back. He wasn't like doing basic contact things and stuff like that. And I was like, hey man, I can't be doing business with people that aren't gonna like take care of clients.
Because that is what it's all about, is making sure the people on the other end of the phone are taken care of.
Yep. And I think like I quit sending business to him, and like 3 months later we ran into each other, and he was like, I just want to let you know how much I appreciate what you said, because like I got in this business to help people, and I lost sight of it. Like the success was, and anyways, so it was I had a lot of respect for it, because So it was like, I think it was like a year later, I started sending business to him again. And he, talked about how he restructured the way that he was doing things to make sure that wouldn't happen again. But like in both of those stories, the thing that was important to me was the execution of commitment, right? Yeah. So they both messed up and they both owned it. Although the first one needed me to call him out to own it, which was a little, a little frustrating.
A little more than should have had to happen. But it's how you recover from that kind of stuff, because mistakes, they're just bound to happen. Everyone involved is a human, and I've never met a perfect one of those yet. So,
nope.
And when you think about realtors and general loan officers just as well, like Carrie, she's so busy. Yeah. She'll have a notebook and she'll have 15 things written on it to do that day, and she'll get through about 7 of them because it's just, it's impossible to keep up with some of this stuff. And you want to make sure you get all the important stuff done, but there's only 24 hours in a day, and sometimes things are way harder than you expect them to be. So that's understandable. People who mess up, it just happens.
Yeah.
But recovery, like you said, not bailing out after you've messed up, that makes a big difference too, I would think. But
yeah, for sure. I think that something that I've had to learn is everybody wants your time, and they want it based on when they want it, right? Yes. And I think that that's probably one of the harder lessons I've had to learn in real estate is setting boundaries.
Sure.
Because I was always looking at it like, well, if they're calling me, it's probably because they're panicking or freaking out about something. And, like I want to try to mitigate as much of that in the process as I can. But I was doing it at the cost of like my relationship and my family time. Yeah. And that wasn't worth it.
That's always a struggle. I've seen a lot of people struggle with that. Yeah. Because when you just compare it to a 9 to 5, you've got a boss that tells you what hours you're working. In real estate, you've got about 10 bosses telling you what hours you're going to work, and they don't always overlap very well. Yeah,
not even to mention like going on vacations, because it's like, I know I'm not the only one. So I've talked with like 3 or 4 other agents who have said something similar. But my wife has a standing joke with me that's like, if we want our business to explode,
just leave town.
Just go on vacation. Because I swear every time I go on vacation or I start a project around the house, business goes crazy.
Yeah. Yeah. Kind of like we wash your car, it's going to rain sort of deal. Yeah. Perfect.
Great. Thanks.
Yeah. And you can't really complain about that, but you can't ignore it either. So it's just one of those things that you got to always be available.
Yeah.
A lot of that comes from company culture as well. You know what I mean? Because I've worked with a bunch of different companies, and it starts at the top. Everyone says that, but it's never been more true in real estate, because who's leading that ship is going to determine if it's hitting rocks regularly or not.
For sure.
You got a team, right? How many?
I have a team. Yeah. So I have 3 people on my team. And we don't have, I haven't opted to purchase an office space.
Sure.
Just because I had an honest conversation with my team, and I said, if you need this space, I'll get it. But if you're not going to use it, I have most of my team, actually all of my team, is younger than I am. So I think that a lot of younger people are a little more comfortable with a casual atmosphere, like their home, or like setting up a office space or something like that. And then just utilizing like the conference room or whatever when they need it. So so I had an honest conversation with them, and they all said they didn't want one. So I was like, okay, well, then we're just gonna. So I just email ahead, and I'm like, hey, is the conference room available at this time? And I meet with clients, but what we call in the business ICSs, or initial counseling sessions, I think are imperative to setting expectations with clients on the front end. And so I'll meet people in the office just so that we can talk about what their expectations are, what their goals are, like things like that, so that I make sure that I'm helping them buy what they need. So yeah, that's the only time I ever go into the office. I don't go in for trainings or something unless one of my team members wants to go and I'm supporting them, or I get invited to either talk or be a part of something. That's usually the only time I go in.
And you're always on the move anyway. There's not a lot of real estate agents that can just sit in an office and get a lot done. I mean, you got to be places and see things and point things out to people, and it's definitely a mobile job.
Yeah.
That's Carrie laughs about it. Her office is actually on 4 wheels, so it just wherever she's parked is her office.
It is. It's the reality that we live.
Okay. Anything else? Anything else you want to cover or talk about, or anything else you want to say, or anyone you want to point at and say, I told you so, you know?
No, that's funny.
No shout outs.
Yeah. No. I mean, I'm,
remember the old TRL live shout outs? People get on there and say hello to my cousin in Washington.
No, I don't, because, I don't know, man. I at one point I thought the grass was going to be greener on the other side, and I went to another brokerage, and the brokerage, this is going to sound crazy, I'm sure, to a lot of people, probably like real estate agents specifically, but in this like Insta famous culture that we live in, I think that a lot of people would be like, what? So I went to this brokerage because I thought that it was more in line with who I was and how I did business. And the reality is the broker that was there was just an incredible woman. I mean, she was professional and smart and articulate. And when I met with her, I was like, that's the kind of person. Like when we're talking about culture, right? Like surround yourself with the kind of people that you want to be. I was like, that's the kind of like that grade A personality that like I want to be around, right? And so I think I went to that brokerage more because who she was and what she stood for was in line with what I was trying to be. Not that the brokerage itself was. And so anyway, so I went, and very generously, the owner was not the broker. Okay. So the owner was so excited about like how I wanted to do business, how I wanted to grow my business, like stuff like that. She was like, I'm going to throw an event for you specifically, and it's going to be around one of your hobbies, and you're going to be like a talking person for it. We're going to pay for all of the expenses for the event. It's going to be like I mean, it was disc golf. So it was going to be a tournament, and it was going to be for me. I'll have my own booth. Like we'll hand out like custom made discs for disc golf that would have like my contact information. We'd hand them out, which disc golf discs are expensive compared to Frisbee, you know? So, so it was very generous. So I talked with some event organizers and some of the like tournament people for the disc golf professional disc golf thing, and like figured out all the hoops that I'd have to jump through for that. And I was in the process of doing that. And then she was like, we'll do a car show, because I'm really into cars. And I had the amazing privilege of purchasing my dream car 2 years ago.
What is it?
It is a 2011 Corvette Grand Sport.
Oh, wow.
It's one of 500. I had to scour the country for 2 years to find it. It's a very one-off thing. The one that I wanted. The interior is special ordered, so to get something from 2011, like you got to find somebody that special ordered the car exactly the way that you wanted it. So anyway, I get pretty nerded out when I talk about like my car and stuff. And so she was going to do a car show for me as well. And we're going to do like prizes and stuff like that. And then she was going to put me in a magazine, and then she was going to purchase a billboard for me on 565.
Wow. That's a big package.
It's a big package. Actually, I was good with the disc golf thing because I love the disc golf community. Yeah. I think it's one of the most inclusive communities I could ever imagine. I got to meet Tom Monroe. He passed a little while back, but he was like the father of disc golf. And he really pushed for a lot of our courses that are here in Huntsville.
Yeah.
He lived in Birmingham, so I got to meet him. Super awesome dude. Everybody I've ever played with has just been awesome, grade A people. So like I was super excited about that tournament. Not for self-promotion, but just to like
just
give back
like
to the community. Yeah. Didn't care about the car show. As much as I love my car and talking with people about it, it's the fulfillment of a dream, not the car. That's the big part to me about it. So that felt a little like gaudy and like showboaty, and I wasn't sure that I was really interested in that. And then she got on the magazine thing, and I started getting uncomfortable. And then she said the billboard thing, and I was like, I'm out.
Yeah.
And she was like, "You're what?" And I was like, I'm leaving." And she was like, "What?"
Yeah.
And I was like, I can't work at this brokerage anymore. I was like, I don't want what this is. Like, no, like diss to anybody who has a billboard or anything like that.
Well, from what you've described, it's almost like a shift from personal to commercial, just slow increments until now you're just commercialized.
Yeah. So, like I said, I don't have any qualm with anybody who has a billboard, or a billboard on 565.
That's definitely not for anyone, for sure.
Right. So for the way that I've built my business, people don't call me because they saw my name on a billboard. They call me because their friends and their family are like, we trust him. Yeah. Right. And so I was like, I don't know that that's the image that I want to portray. Like you're saying, like it's going from personal to very commercialized. And so I left that brokerage, and the owner was like, that's so crazy. And I can understand it from her perspective. She's willing to put a ton of money into supporting the growth of my business. And then I want to leave, you know? So, well,
that's definitely a time for reflection, you know?
Yeah. So for me, it was, if I hadn't grown my business at all, that would have been a great way to grow my business, right? It doesn't mirror my personality and how I do work, but I could understand how somebody would see benefit to that. So yeah, I don't know.
You're with Remax now though, right?
I was with Remax, and then I did that, and then I went back to Remax. So,
I see. Okay.
Yeah, I was not at Remax for 2 weeks.
Oh wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
It was funny. Steve, when in my exit interview leaving the first time, he said something to me walking out the door. He was like, "I'll see you in 2 weeks." And I was like, "What?" And then I didn't think about it. And then when I called him to come back, I was like, "Hey, Steve." I was like, "It's been 2 weeks." And he was like, he laughed and he was like, "I'll have paperwork waiting in the office." And so we sat down, and I was like, "Don't give me too much crap."
You did a lot of growing in 2 weeks.
I said, I tried, man. Anyways.
Yeah, it's a good, I guess it's one of the biggest brokerages, obviously. They got really good support. They help you guys. I mean, the training's just off the charts from what I've seen.
Invaluable.
Yeah.
I mean, to me, the culture is the thing that's the selling point.
Yes.
Being
around like-minded individuals makes a massive difference.
Yeah.
And back to the smaller brokerage, those are good plans. Her process, those were all good plans. But if that's not where you're at in your mind, and she's looking at, you're looking at different end goals for where you're going.
Exactly.
And they both work. I'm sure they both work, obviously, or people wouldn't keep putting themselves on billboards. So that's got to be some value and merit.
For sure.
But that's not, it's easy to find your tribe, I guess, is the main thing.
Yes.
But Remax is a pretty good place to be, it sounds like.
Yeah, it's been my experience for, the last 5 years, and I've definitely enjoyed that. So, yeah.
A good team, good people.
Oh man, yeah. I love each person that's on my team. They all have a reason for why they're passionate about real estate, and they're all that's all something that's very important to them. And knowing what is your reason and purpose for being there,
makes it every day easier.
It's huge. Yeah.
Yep.
I determined, pretty early into the process what I wanted my marketing strategy to be. And I felt that what I had to offer was consistency and professionalism.
Yeah.
And so I bought, 10 of the exact same shirt and 10 of the exact same shorts.
Right.
So that it was like every time I see Derick,
he's exactly the same.
He looks exactly the same. Yep. And that's what I felt. I have a really good friend that wears Hawaiian shirts when he shows houses. Yep. Because what he has to offer is comedy and fun. And he's like, house buying should be fun. And I want you to feel fun when you're doing it. And I have a lot of respect for that. So like, to me, I completely agree with you. I think that who we are should be professional.
Yeah.
And then it should very much mirror what people can expect from us.
Well, I had a heavy background in construction, so maybe it's a different perspective, but some of the hardest working, most professional people I've ever seen were covered in grease and dirt and oil. Oh. Well, appreciate it. I mean, it's fun. Hopefully you had fun.
Yeah.
Studio held up well for you.
Yeah. Yeah. I've never done it like video wise. So
is it stranger? Is it any of this weird?
I mean, I think if you think about it, it could be weird. But I just felt like I was talking to you the whole time. So
well, you were technically,
you're right.
Hopefully you were.
Yeah. So it just feels like a natural conversation.
Yeah. Well, good.
I appreciate it. So
that's what we want. Me. Hopefully you'll come back and do it again.
Absolutely.
I'm sure you'll have plenty more real estate fiascos and stories and triumphs and disasters. And
I have many stories. If you ever want to hear horror stories, I got them covered.
Yeah. So. We'll do Halloween horror episode.
That's an awesome concept. Like right around Halloween,
real
talk about the
horror
worst
stories.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Physical scary things. The worst I had was I was showing a house and opened a door and there was a person in the room and they just didn't leave. But I've had some like transaction horror things. Yeah. Like I had a client purchasing 15 acres and we found out that there was a cemetery in the middle of it.
Oh, wow.
So
yeah, that's that kind of stuff. What do you do about that? You know what I mean? You can't move it. You can't clear it out.
I could talk about all of that stuff. That'd be another one for another day.
Yeah, good idea.
It was a bad transaction for sure.
And there's nothing scarier than paperwork to me. As ironic as that is, paperwork's the most daunting part of the job.
Yeah.
But well, I appreciate it. It was fun.
Yeah.
Guess we'll wrap up.
Okay.
If you're good with that.
Yep.